It's hot. Man, what a beautiful fall day. Be a shame to just spend it all day inside some converted retail space in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. But that's what I'm gonna go do. Welcome to Quiet RC. As usual, I'm Rob. Today we're gonna talk about my weekend racing at Ian Hobbies in Columbus, Ohio. Oh, and there'll be no montage of me driving to and from the place, so don't worry about that. Shh. Let's talk race weekend. Last weekend was the first time I've actually traveled to a completely other state to do a race weekend. I've traveled for other reasons, obviously, but this one specifically, going to Ohio, going to Columbus, Ohio, to Ian Hobbies to do a race event that they were doing on Saturday. The original plan was to leave kind of in the evening and get there kind of late and maybe get in an hour or two of practice. However, my in-laws, bless them, were kind enough to offer to pick up the kids, so I was actually able to leave at about 11 o'clock in the morning on Friday to make the 3-hour drive over to Columbus and get a full day of practice in. Packed up, ready to go, headed out over there, and rolled into town right as they were opening at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon for the evening for practice. The outside, the strip mall that it's in, doesn't look too active. However, you walk in through the door and it is 26,000 square feet of RC cars. They have a hobby shop on site. They have a bunch of different crawler courses there. I think they have 3. They have a dedicated mini-Z track. They have over 100, I think almost 140 pit spots, and we'll talk more about that a little later. They have a dedicated off-road carpet area. They have a dedicated on-road. Now, Bruce, the owner who ran the event, I chatted with him. They've actually been there since 2009, I believe he said. I think he's been running it, well, I'm not sure, I can't remember. But I think he said they've been there since 2009. And if you notice, the driver's seat is actually wheelchair accessible, which is a nice little bonus. They have a dedicated drift track in the back and more pits that are there. There's also obviously a restroom. There's a women's restroom, which has probably never been used. The whole place is quite incredible to walk in and just see this whole setup. They have projectors putting the live RC on the wall so you can watch the events even when you're back in the pits. Now I got there and I set up my pit. One thing that I forgot, and I actually did a pretty good job of not forgetting anything, and even this I didn't really forget, I just didn't even have one, was a pit light, because it was a little bit in a dark corner, but thankfully one of the other guys that traveled over from Indy had a spare pit light for me, which is great. I brought with me my GT12 and my 17.5 12 scale, and that's what I was going to run for the weekend. Now, what's interesting about these pit spots is when I walked in, I noticed a lot of them had all sorts of tools and cars and chargers and everything spread out there, but nobody was there. The thing you can do there is you can actually rent a pit spot monthly and just have all your stuff there. It's a secure commercial building, so you're able to have reasonable confidence that your stuff is going to be fine there. You can also do a monthly membership, and if you pay that, then you get unlimited practice, and I think you might have a like race night covered as well, but I don't recall. You'd have to check with them directly over at Ian Hobbies. But I am telling you, if you live anywhere within an hour of Columbus, Ohio, you need to be involved with this track. I don't understand how you couldn't go there all the time. Like, it's awesome. Definitely recommend making it over there for any reason you can. Obviously, with the mini-Z, the crawler, the off-road, the on-road, the drift, there's kind of something for everybody. Let's get to the actual event that was being held on Saturday. The classes were VTA, which I believe was kind of the main purpose of the event because it was called VTA Champs. And from there, they also had 25.5 touring class. They had a 21.5 US GT, which is also touring cars, but you have to use the 21.5 turn US GT motor. They had GT12, which also uses the 21.5 US GT motor. They had the 17.5 12 scale. They also had a 13.5 12 scale, which is crazy fast. And lastly, they had a F1 class, which I have an F1 car, need to get really practiced up at it because I'm pretty bad at it. Friday, I was there from about 2 to 8 o'clock at night, just essentially 6 hours straight of just practice and just putting packs through these cars and getting them to run, and hopefully trying to dial them in. The 17.5 was actually dialed in pretty well already. I didn't have to do much. I just did a little bit of messing around with some of the gearing and ended up with the gearing that I wanted, that I thought was going to be my best chance for race day. The GT12, on the other hand, I never really felt that I got it fully dialed in. I was losing way too much speed in the corners and really tried to mess around a lot with different settings on the steering side. Now, one thing that I was very disciplined about is I did a great job of just changing one thing at a time, taking it out, doing about 20 or 30 laps, coming back, usually changing it because it didn't really work out the way I wanted it to, but that's what I did with this one. The other thing with my GT12 is I actually had been running the Tiken R5 Pro 1S version for quite some time, but I just wasn't happy with it. So I switched over to the Hobbywing, let's see here, the XE Run XR10 Pro 1S version. I think that's what it is. Mainly because I was able to get this programming box that actually gives you the two main things that I wasn't able to get with the Tiken setup, which is I was able to see what my RPMs were and what my temp of my motor was, because those are the things that I have to keep an eye on with this because I don't run a fan on it to reduce weight. So I was messing around with toe and camber and caster on the CRC CK25, which is what I run. Is actually, it's not difficult to set up, but it's just very straightforward. You either move these shims forward and back to adjust the caster. So that's nice. You don't have to have a special measuring tool to do the caster. I was also making sure that they were the correct weight and making sure that they had the cross weight of 50-50 to balance out the actual handling of the car, which I use the SkyRC Bluetooth corner weights, which have been a great investment, and lucky enough to have somebody print up a little holder for me. And then I just added a strap and obviously my decal. With the GT12, the best I could ever muster was a 12.7 lap in practice. However, during both qualifying and the race event, I don't think I ever got below 13 seconds a lap, which is unfortunate because I think the pace was closer to high 11s. After practice, we were done about 8. We had had enough. Went back to the hotel. Me and 2 other guys from Indy went out for some really good Mexican and a couple margaritas, and then called it a night. Now, race day. I believe they opened up at 8 a.m. I got there about 9 a.m. and just started doing some more practicing. Now, one of the things that I did was I put on fresh tires on the 17.5 foams that I had cut before I went to Ohio. I did end up doing a gearing change for the final setup of the 17.5. Let me see what I actually ended up with here. I was at a 68 spur. Oh, this is really hard to see. That is very small. 49 tooth pinion. So 49, 68. And my tire started out at 40 millimeters. So whatever that rollout is, but I had calculated it at the time. Now, what they actually did was interesting. I'd never seen this before. For the VTA class, they actually did 1 minute kind of pre-qualifying to see where you would be lined up or start with your qualifying rounds. So it was 1 minute, you got in about 5 laps, and you were on the track alone, with the catch being that if you had to be marshaled, you were done. So if you wrecked, you were out. That began at 11:30 a.m., but the regular qualifying began at noon. Now, I'm used to doing 2 qualifiers and then a main. They actually did 3 qualifying runs in the main. And with the 17.5, they were actually doing 8-minute qualifyings versus just an 8-minute main. So that was intense. It was very tiring. That is a long time to be concentrating on a car that's moving around this fast. One thing that I loved about this particular track is the track barriers were very forgiving. I mean, you could kind of bounce off of them, whereas usually I'm used to them not moving at all. I didn't break a single thing. I think the only thing that really happened was in the main for 17.5, I pulled a full-on Mercedes in the 90s at Le Mans, and the only thing that really happened was I lost a body clip. Really? He's not going to show footage of his racing? No, I guess he was busy driving, so that makes sense. For me, the biggest challenge of the day was remembering to get the traction compound and sauce my tires at the start of the race before mine. It's kind of a little bit of a thing you have to be paying attention to because I want to say there's maybe about 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour between each qualifying. And then they did do a break for lunch, which was nice. Got out, got some hibachi, and probably ate too much. The pace of the event was really good. Bruce, again, the owner, kept everybody moving just along very quickly. And usually he was just telling you about a minute or 2 minutes out from your race. So while the other qualifying was going on or while the other main was going on, he was talking to the pits and saying like, hey, VTA, you're going to be up next. Start thinking about getting ready. So everybody was pretty much ready to go right when the other race wrapped up. Rarely were they waiting for people to come out of the pits, which happens sometimes, but they did a couple times. But everybody understood the pace and everybody kept moving. So it was great. Everybody was ready to go when that race finished and just filed right on to the driver's stand. Amazingly, everything really wrapped up by about 7 p.m. My race was done at about 6. I waited for the other 2 races to finish up with the folks that I was there with. One of the guys from Indy RC that I came up with, he finished 3rd after bumping up from the B main in VTA, so great work on his part. I was out of there by about 7 p.m., so able to drive home that night instead of, I was afraid I was going to have to spend another night. Not that there's anything wrong with spending a night in Columbus, Ohio, but, you know, ready to get back home. So really from about 11 a.m. to a little bit before 10 p.m., 11 a.m. on Friday to about 10 p.m. on Saturday, that was the whole weekend for me, 35 hours, which included 6 hours of driving. And it was just straight up, almost all entirely RC. It was a great time. It was a great event. So, wait, is there missing footage? He's not going to go over the results of the day? Well, let's look into that myself. All right, qualifier, round 1. GT12, view results, last. 17.5, view results, last. Let me qualifier round 2. GT12, last. 17.5, last. Round 3. GT12, oh, well, that person crashed out. He was last. 17.5, so he was last. Well, let's go to the mains. GT12, hey! Oh, well, second to last because that person crashed out. 17.5, last. Oof. I mean, the least he could have done was show the CRC 10 scale pan car that he bought at the track. Support your local hobby shops. All right, that seemed unnecessary to go over that. Anyways, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Lots of stuff coming up, lots of projects, lots of builds, all that good stuff. We still have the Quiet RC decals that are available for purchase. The link will be down below. Helps the channel out a little bit, and we'll talk RC again later.